All right, so welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be talking about why calories actually matter. And if you are first starting off, and this is a general lecture, fundamental course on essentially why your calories are important when you're trying to lose weight or gain weight or maintain weight. For the sake of this specific section, we're going to go over why calories matter to lose weight for fat loss, right, or weight loss. And if you watched the previous video on the three main ways to contribute to weight loss and fat loss, then you should have a general idea at this point what we're trying to accomplish. So let's just start off, and essentially we're going to go over the facts of how you can achieve this calorie concept, right? So very, very important when it comes to anything in terms of your weight loss. It's a very, very simple mathematical equation. Now, simple doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy, right? And in the last video, we spoke about how it's calories in versus calories out. And as long as you're burning more calories than the amount of calories you're consuming, then you will lose weight. For the sake of this conversation, we're going to go over some of the pros and cons and some do's and don'ts of how your caloric estimation may be wrong and how we can achieve a accurate representation in getting your specific calorie needs, right? So I just want to start off the conversation that most people, when they first start off, they underestimate the amount of calories they're consuming almost all the time. Very, very common when most people begin, they underestimate the amount of calories that they're consuming. So even in a recent study done in 2018, right, they were trying to educate a bunch of college students on calories. It's just like what I'm trying to do here. Their thought process was that if we can educate the student in terms of calories, in terms of what a calorie is, and how to calculate your own calories and whatnot, it would give you a better understanding in terms of estimating your calorie intake. It's very, very difficult nowadays, or it's very, very difficult for most students to kind of bring a scale with them everywhere they go, or for someone when they're first trying to lose weight to bring a scale, right? So the concept was that they wanted to educate the student on essentially estimating calories by eye, and or just educating them on the amount of calories certain foods had in fast food, let's just say. And what they found was that it was trial by error, trial by trial, that they were able to get better results as opposed to actually educating the individual on what a calorie is. Now, to start that off, I just want to make sure that you guys understand that. I wanted to make sure that you guys are understanding the concept of calorie education and actually doing it, because they're two vastly different things. Okay, so I can educate you as much as I can on calorie, in terms of calorie intake, macros, everything. But the main important driver for you would be trial and error. You have to do it. At the end of the day, not me, not your spouse, not anyone. You have to do it. And you being aware of it is smart and very, very good, but you have to figure out whether or not it's correct or not by doing it. It's only in doing it that you can get the necessary experience to actually know and be in control of your calorie intake. Okay, so hopefully this is more of a cool way. So a lot of times I get asked why I do these videos, and it's because this is a significantly easier video to sit through and watch and listen and understand than it is to sit through an actual lecture in a university, or getting your ears blown off by a professor or something like that, because or reading a dry textbook, because they can easily put you to sleep very, very easily. Okay, so having said that, a couple things I want to go over. The whole rationale behind this is to, again, increase your knowledge. and awareness when it comes to weight loss and fat loss. And what I'm going through here will equip you with the necessary knowledge and information to manage your own weight loss, right? So let's put that aside. And of course, if you do have any history of binges or eating disorders, I highly recommend talking to a registered dietitian. I highly recommend going to a professional for something like that, because that is not a joke and it's very serious. And there's no stigma to go and get help when it comes to things like this, because binge eating and eating disorders are a serious issue. Okay, so just put that as a disclaimer out there. If that's you, then I recommend you consulting one of them. So again, key points: calorie deficit. By this point, you should know what a calorie deficit is. If you don't, a calorie deficit is when you are burning more energy or calories than you're consuming. So calorie deficit. Calorie surplus. Calorie surplus is when you're eating excess calories, so you are gaining weight. Okay. Different terminologies. You can hear isocaloric, you can hear hypercaloric, and hypocaloric. Okay. Hypocaloric is what we'll refer to here as a calorie deficit. So hypo with an O, hypocaloric conditions state is a state of a calorie deficit. A hypercaloric, like you're hyperactive, hyper with an ER. Hypercaloric state or condition means you are in a state of gain. So you are gaining weight, okay? So you're in a caloric surplus. Isocaloric. Isocaloric, just like an isometric hold. You're holding something, you're holding iso, I'm holding. Isocaloric conditions means that you are maintaining your weight. Okay, so those are 3 common definitions that you might hear being slung around here in this lecture. So if you don't know what they are, there it is. Okay. If you are not in a caloric deficit, you will not lose weight. Reason being, your body has enough fuel, has enough energy coming in when you're eating, so it will not burn your fat storages. It will not use your fat storages. So it's very simple. If you are not burning more energy, or if you are not eating less, or if you are not somewhere along the lines in a net negative in terms of calorie or energy expenditure, you will not lose weight. Your body needs to feel or needs to be in a state of deprivation in order for it to lose weight, right? Whether you feel like you're in a deprivation or not is 2 different subjects. So a perfect example is, let's say you eat regularly. Let's say you eat unknowingly 2,000 calories a day. And let's say certain days you're more active than usual. Usually in the summertime, most people are outside, they're hanging out, the sun is beaming, the weather's nice, it's hot, you're sweating. You burn a lot of calories, right? And you don't realize it. But you are burning more calories than you are probably consuming, and so you lose weight, which is why most people in the summertime are lighter than they are in the wintertime. Do you feel deprived in the summertime? No. When you go on an actual diet, do you feel deprived? For most people, yes, right? So again, your body is burning more calories, so it is in theory in a state of deprivation, whether you like it or not, or know it or not, or feel it or not. If you're burning more calories than your body's consuming, you are depriving your body of specific energy requirements, and so therefore it will start to burn through fat storages, which is why it will burn weight, burn fat, and you will lose weight, lose fat, in theory. Okay, so again, if you are not in a caloric deficit, hypocaloric conditions, you will not lose weight. All right, so having said that, if you are in a isocaloric condition, your body will also not lose weight. Your body will not burn fat. If you are in an isocaloric condition, or if you are in a hypercaloric condition, your body will not lose weight. Your body will use the energy that it's eating to burn off what is necessary. If your body is in a hypocaloric condition, only then will it start to lose weight, because now your body is saying, crap, we need energy from somewhere. We're not getting enough energy from this person. We need to get energy from somewhere. So your body starts to go through its storages, right? If your body is not in a state of deprivation and you're getting enough calories in, your body's happy. Your body's like, hey, we're getting enough food, we're going to use that. And it's as simple as that, all right? So hopefully that clears up the whole concept. But what's funny is that actually in studies when it comes to caffeine and coffee, for some particular reason, and you can maybe I can put some of the studies in the show notes or whatnot, but caffeine actually triggers a some sort of pathway when it comes to burning weight. So it can kind of raise your your resting metabolic rate, or it can raise your basal metabolic rate. Some people interchange that, but you can raise certain functions in your body and processes where it will cause a slight increase in burning extra calories, whether you are in a isocaloric, hypercaloric, or hypocaloric condition, which is very, very interesting. So that means if you take enough caffeine, because it works, right? Which is why you can't consume too much caffeine when it comes to sports related competitions, because it does work. Okay, so just be very, very careful when it comes to your caffeine intake. Okay, but caffeine does have a way of actually causing you to burn more calories. But that doesn't mean you pop pills and drink like 8 to 20 cups of coffee a day. Just saying. Now, in questions like this, I always get asked, what about body recomposition, right? For those of you who don't know what a body recomposition is, body recomposition is what most people want. Your general population always wants to lose weight and gain muscle at the same time, right? That's what we call body recomposition. The problem with body recomposition is that, let's just say you want to body recomposition. Let's say you want to recomp at 180 pounds. Let's say mostly this is for males. Let's say you have a male that is 180 pounds and he's like, I want to stay at 180 pounds, but I want to lose fat and I want to gain muscle and be at 180 pounds, which is very common. The problem with that is that you can't expect to lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. What you can do is reduce fat and have some sort of muscles start to show because you're losing fat, right? So let's just say you in order for us, again, we already established that you have to lose weight in order to lose fat. So in order for you to lose, let's say 10 pounds of fat, you also at the same time want to be at 180 pounds. So that means if you lost 10 pounds of fat, you're 170. But you also want to gain muscle. So that means you also want to gain 10 pounds of muscle at the same time. Realistically, does not occur. Realistically, does not happen. For beginners, maybe you got your beginners gains, your newbie gains, etc. Yeah, great. Even then, it's still not ideal. Okay, it's definitely not ideal for advanced lifters, intermediate lifters. For beginners, when you first start eating right and everything like that, go figure that you actually start to look better, and most people will significantly lose fat and some will gain a good amount of size as well. But to say that you're going to gain 10 pounds of muscle within the same time span of losing 10 pounds of fat, very, very, very seldom does the body actually do that. Especially without the help of special sports supplements like testosterone or steroids, etc., so on and so forth. Okay. The reason why, I personally don't recommend body recomposition. What I do recommend are slow and consistent, persistent, and maintainable gains, right? So if you were to lose 10 pounds of fat, that's great. And then from there, we can slowly work our way up and gain, right? Sometimes you might have to go on a mass or bulking cycle, or even a muscle gaining cycle, muscle gaining phase, where you gain more weight so then you can cut down and then reveal the muscle gain that the muscles that you gain during your calorie surplus, right? But for the sake of this conversation, we're going to be talking about weight loss and fat loss. So we're really not really talking about hypercaloric conditions. We're going to be talking more so hypocaloric conditions. So by now you must be asking, I'm telling you this right now, how do I calculate my calorie intake, right? It's very, very important that in the beginning, before we do all of this, If you watched the last video, you already kind of have an idea about it. My recommendation is always to just start off normally at first. So whatever you're doing right now, don't start to try to count calories if you're trying to lose weight. What I recommend doing is just paying attention, writing down everything that you're eating, have a good idea of what you're eating, whether it be a food journal, food diary, whatever. Keep everything the same and just be more active. Just that in and itself will usually cause you to lose weight. By doing so, if your weight starts to stall after you just increase your activity, then you can slowly start to work out more, right? While still paying attention. And anywhere around this time, you can start to pay attention. And then if you feel like you don't need to eat that much, you can slowly reduce your food intake and whatnot. But you want to start counting and calculating what you're eating. And so before you ever even do any of this, simply increasing your energy expenditure, increasing your daily activities will help you to lose weight. Sometimes, believe it or not, you will actually lose a lot more weight doing it this way, maintain your sanity without having to be so restrictive and whatnot. And you got to remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So if this is sustainable and maintainable, then hats off to you. Some people, depending on their goals, depending on what their wants are, depending on when they want it, might need to might need to count their calories because there's a deadline. Let's just say you have a wedding coming up and you're very, very adamant about weighing a specific amount, then maybe taking that approach will be too slow, or maybe taking that approach may be too up in the air for you. Maybe you want a more calculated approach. And so that's why we have things like this, where we're talking about counting your calories and being more measurable in terms of objectivity, right? So having said that, I just want to put that out there so you guys can understand that, again, just increasing your activity will help you, okay? But let's just start off, right? So generally, if you first start off, everyone's different, right? When you first start off and you've never counted calories before, the very first thing you should do is get a formula. Go online. There's plenty of stuff online. You can determine your you can determine your resting metabolic rate. You can determine through the Harris-Benedict formula, whatnot. Just Google it. You'll find something. Plug in. It usually will ask you about your height, your weight, your age, your activity levels, whether you're active, you're not active, you're sedentary, or you're moderately active or heavily active, so on and so forth, right? So all these play into the equation because of your lifestyle, right? And what you should do right now is just find something on Google it. There are plenty of calculations online that will help you get there. Once you get that number, then you can plug and play, all right? So just get the number and then we'll go through it. Now, the problem with the number sometimes, and I have to throw a caveat at you guys, the problem with the formulas is that there's it's not always accurate, okay? And you're going to find that it's not accurate. And I'll be the first person to tell you usually the number is kind of way off. The reason, though, we still recommend it when you first start off is so that you have an idea. Okay, we always start it off first so that you have an idea. Now, after you use it the first time, you will probably never use that formula ever again. Honestly, you will probably never use that formula ever again, because by the time you use it, you will have adjusted your goals to that number, and then you will know from then on what your caloric intake should be, right? And so just giving you a heads up. Now, each individual is different. So let's just say you're 24 years old, you're a male, you're active a lot, you're etc. And we grab two individuals of the same exact population and gender and stats and everything like that. Their calorie needs could be completely different, even though they plugged in the same numbers. There's a lot of science behind it. You know, each individual is different. Their resting metabolic rate is different. Their hormones are different. There are so many different things that come into play. Your lifestyle could occur. Your lifestyle could play a huge factor. Your stress levels can play a factor. Your occupation can play a factor. Everything can play a factor. And that's one of the reasons why formulas are generally just that. It's formulas, right? It gives you a basic building block for you to chip away at, if that's the best way you can understand it. Okay, now having said that, right, so usually it's if you don't like those formulas and you're kind of like a math person and you want to try it yourself, the general formula for estimating calories is first getting your resting metabolic rate. If I lost you already, hang on tight. Okay, resting metabolic rate. Resting metabolic rate is simply how much your body burns in the course of a day without any additional functions. Whenever you're sleeping, just your daily activities, everything in general, your breathing, just sitting and sleeping, etc. That's your resting metabolic rate. How do we calculate that? Grab your body weight in terms of pounds, multiply it by 10, give or take. There's different varying formulas. Some say 10 to 12, some say 10. Okay, so just do it by 10. And in general, in theory, that's your resting metabolic rate, right? Now, we're not done yet. Because if you're 180 pounds and you multiply it by 10, there's no way you're going to be eating 1,800 calories a day. Okay, so it's your resting metabolic rate multiplied by your activity factors. Now, when I say activity factors, it's your lifestyle, right? So again, we went over this. Generally, there's about like 4 different lifestyles. So there's a very light, right, sedentary lifestyle, which would be maybe you just sit around a lot at your job, your office worker, etc. The number for that would be 1.2 to 1.3. I would highly recommend checking the article that's accompanying this link. If you're watching it in the article, great, you have that table there. If you're not, the link should be in the description below, and you can kind of see the table there. If you're active, but you're not as active, you're just like a low level activity in terms of like maybe you walk 2 miles or 30 minutes a day on top of an office job, you're considered low activity or low active, right? Let's just say. And generally that number is 1.5 to 1.6, right? So you're multiplying your resting metabolic rate by these numbers here. If you're active, right? Now the next category is active. Now if you're active, you're about 3 hours of physical activity a day, in theory, generally. So that means you're probably half of your time at your job is spent sitting, but not the entire day. You're on your feet for about 2 to 3 hours a day. Okay, you're fairly active. Okay, so at this point, you'll be multiplying it by 1.6 to 1.7. The next one, the last one, would be heavily active or at this point, you know, aggressively active or whatever. There's so many different names for it that it's tough to say, but usually the next one is heavily or aggressively active, right? Which is a physical laborious job. Maybe you're a cop, you're a construction worker, you're barely sitting down, you're always on your feet, etc. Usually this is a 1.9 to 2.1. Okay, so again, to calculate your caloric needs, it will be your resting metabolic rate multiplied by these numbers here for your activity levels. That will yield you your total energy requirements. So that will, if you get the number for that, you would get the number for your caloric needs, right? Just to maintain. Very, very important to remember that. The number you get from there is supposed to be the number of calories you need to maintain your weight. Remember that. Again, resting metabolic rate multiplied by your activity levels gives you the caloric number for you to maintain your weight. So we haven't even begun talking about losing weight or gaining weight at that point. Okay, so here is 6 steps for you to understand. Usually this is what I explain to my clients. The 6-step strategy for you to make sure that your caloric calculation is correct, right? Very first thing, before you even think about doing all this, you want to weigh yourself every day for 1 week because you want to get a good idea of how much you weigh, all right? Don't just get one number because maybe you drank a lot of water one day, you ate a lot of salt or whatnot. So you want to weigh yourself either bi-weekly or maybe every day and just get the averages from there. But what you want is an average of the weight for 1 week. That should give you a good idea. Now, if it's that time of the month for you and you're a female, maybe you want to do it every the week when you're actually off of it or something like that. So because hormonal functions will cause bloating and etc. to cause the numbers to be off, right? So you want to get the number of your weight in an ideal scenario. Once you get those averages for your weight, right, we'll establish the tables and the formulas and everything. You get your number, resting metabolic rate, multiply activity levels, etc., yada, yada, yada. Once you get that, eat that. Try your best to start calculating and counting calories and eat that amount of calories that it's telling you to. For the large majority of people, I'll give you a heads up again, you will not be in a hypocaloric state. Almost 95%, probably, just an anecdotal number of my clients, when they first do this, will end up not being in a hypocaloric condition. So they end up either maintaining their weight or gaining weight, actually. So please be aware of that. Now, keep it consistent. Keep that number. Try to eat that caloric intake. Try to eat those amount of calories and check the scale for 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. Again, this is a marathon, remember, not a sprint. Keep that number and try to track it for 2 to 3 weeks. Weigh yourself every day, or every 2 days, or every 3 days, whatever. Make sure you get more than 2 weigh-ins a week. What this does is it gives us an average, right? So after 1 week or 2 weeks, we should start to see whether you're either maintaining your weight or gaining weight, okay? And if you're paying attention at this point, you should know whether you're gaining weight, losing weight, or your weight's remaining the same, okay? So if your weight's going down, we know that you are losing weight. If your weight is the same, we know that your weight is, we know that the calories that you're eating is on point with how much you weigh. If your weight is going up, we know that you're eating too many calories for your specific needs, right? Your caloric intake or your activity. So the key point here is that we also want to make sure you're not doing anything too fast here. So let's just say, I'll just give you a number. Let's just say you're 180 pounds and you do this and you weigh yourself every week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and you find that you gain like 10 pounds. That's way too fast, okay? If you lost 10 pounds of weight, that is also way too fast. So you really want to calculate and adjust from there. So if you find that you're losing too much weight or you're gaining too much weight, you want to either slow down that process by slowly increasing your intake or decreasing your intake, okay? So the absolute best way is to do it through this body weight tracking of every week to 2 weeks. And you want to give yourself 2 to 3 weeks in terms of time span to calculate these needs, okay? So 2 to 3 weeks should be enough to give you that window of opportunity to adjust and figure out the required calories. If you're gaining weight, you want to cut down those calories. Now, how many calories are we cutting down by? Calorie cut, when we're gaining weight or losing weight, we're cutting it down by about 100 to 500 calories a week, okay? So if you're gaining too much weight, you want to start cutting those calories down. So let's just say the number from your calculation was 3,000 calories. If you're gaining weight on those calories, on those calorie numbers, after 2 weeks and you realize that you're gaining weight, you want to start to subtract it by, let's just say, 100, and then go from there. So you'll gradually decrease the amount of calories that you're taking in, and then you'll again readjust. You'll check yourself in, weighing yourself on the scale, and you'll see if the scale is going down. 100 calories a week is usually for most beginners, okay, and I highly recommend that for most people to begin with at first. 500 calories is on, you have a range between 100 to 500 calories. 100 is the bare minimum for most beginners, right? 500 is on the upper levels, and that's for most advanced people. That's for advanced lifters who can kind of know what they're doing, right? So in the beginning, you want to slowly calculate and adjust from there. So you can do 100 calories, you can do 200 calories a week, you can do 300 calories, up to you, whichever you feel comfortable, so that you can maintain this process, right? You don't want to cut calories too drastically, remember that. Because if you cut calories too drastically, you refer back to the last video, in terms of eating less, you'll find that, you know, it's gonna cause too much systemic fatigue on your body. Okay, now for the most part, that's about it. It's as simple as that, okay, in terms of calculating all those needs. And again, I want to stress this I can't stress this enough. The equations and formulas are only just used in the beginning as a stepping stone. Afterwards, right now, after you calculate all that, you will never need to use that again, because from then on, you know your calorie needs, right? You know that eating at 2,500 calories will cause you to lose weight. And then from there, when next time you hop back on, or maybe you want to gain weight, you slowly increase those numbers, and vice versa. You will either increase those numbers or decrease those numbers. Let's say you go back to 2,500 calories and you find that your weight is increasing. Then you know that your lifestyle changed a little bit and you might need to decrease those calories, so on and so forth, okay? But at the end of the day, weight tracking is a gold standard in terms of measuring your progress, simply because of its objectivity. It's a number. You can't lie about that number, right? Sometimes the numbers are off, but at the end of the day, you have a consistent, measurable goal, measurable standard, okay? So that concludes this lecture video in terms of how to calculate and why your calories are important and what it means to your weight loss and fat loss, and how you can figure out your own caloric needs. And for the most part, that should be it. If it helps you a lot, or if you have any questions, please post it in the comments below, or even post it on the article below. And again, if you're watching this video on YouTube, check out the article that is accompanying this link as well.